Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3747, maybe. Today's date is December 7, 2025. It's been almost like a morning at 8:54 a.m. Alright, let's just jump to the question. Alright, yeah, let's go. Okay, the question is, what if laughter made you invisible? Oh, what if laughter made you invisible? That's a very weird question somehow. A frictionalized version, by the way. Okay, yeah. Whatever. Okay, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like a force you to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, or when I try to create that reality, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge and information and experience that I've been through, and try to kind of like create that reality from the basis, from the information that I have, I mean, knowledge that I have, and somehow it kind of like a feel good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Alright, now regarding about this question, the question says, what if the laughter made you invisible? Now this is kind of like a very weird question. Okay, that key kind of like a laughter made you invisible. First of all, let's just understand first. Can we able to invisible? We cannot. We cannot able to invisible. Why we cannot able to invisible? Well, basically is this thing na ki okay. What is exactly invisible means what? Okay, let's take a kind of like a glass. Okay, yeah, a transparent glass. A transparent glass look little bit of invisible until you unless see them you properly, then you kind of like a see. But kind of like if you seen them probably you might not gonna understand that much. Okay, like basically it's not completely invisible, but somewhat something 70 to 80% is invisible. If you look closely, then you might gonna visible. Okay, yeah. So why does glass is kind of like a simply look invisible to us? Is because of glass have kind of like a some sort of properties that kind of like a simply bend the light and does not reflect. It kind of like simply pass through in itself. Okay, yeah. That's why it's kind of like a bit little invisible. Same thing with the water, same thing with the kind of like a transparent glass and things like that. Okay, yeah. Now let me tell you one thing. When you try to kind of like make sure things are kind of like invisible, you shouldn't supposed to be showcase some sort of property. First of all, you shouldn't supposed to be have a color. Okay, yeah. A glass doesn't really have a color. Like basically, it has a kind of like some sort of color. It bend, but still, almost like a color is non-existence. Okay, yeah. So when you have non-existence color or kind of like a things, then probably I don't know how should I supposed to be explain this properly stuff. How does kind of like simply the glass is kind of like simply invisible, but there is a one answer that I might knew is that ki like basically is this thing that ki you it shouldn't supposed to be reflect. Okay, yeah. Now reflect means what? Look at your hand. Okay, yeah, you can see your hand. How you can see your hand is because of I'm kind of like a looking at my hand because of there is a in my back end there is a sun who is kind of like a striking up with the sunlight. Okay, and that sunlight kind of like hit to my hand and kind of like assembly it reflect to my eyes, and that's why I could kind of like a see the hand. Okay, yeah. But if my hand is kind of like a made of glass, then what exactly happened that ki most of the light is kind of like assembly uh, been through or transfer through or kind of like somebody cross through. Okay, and when it happened, I might not gonna see my hand. Okay, yeah, because light does not reflect, right? Does not reflect in the glass and things like it just pass through. Okay, yeah. So this will gonna kind of like something happen. Now what if we would kind of like somebody what if can we able to kind of like somebody make sure that we showcase such a property like a glass? Okay, like basically a kind of like some light can reflect through us. Does it can we able to do this thing? Well, we cannot. Oh yeah. Why we cannot? Why what is at least this thing? Oh yeah. So basically is this thing I'm actually focusing on this transparent glass, okay, most of the time, because this might be kind of like a something very common and everyone kind of like a knows that thing. It's a kind of like a invisible stuff, invisible object. Okay, yeah, probably almost like a 70-80% of invisible objects. So that's why I'm trying to compare this particular scenario. Okay, yeah. So basically why we cannot able to invisible, okay, yeah, is because of that ki our body is not just made up of glass or not just made up of skin. Inside the skin we have muscles, we have bones, we have veins, we have multiple organs and things and that. Okay, yeah. And does they have a kind of like a some sort of amount of property that really required to live and breathe and things like that. Example is this thing. A glass is kind of like a something solid inside a kind of like a something a glass. Okay, yeah. Like basically is this thing, the inner layer of the glass and outer layer of the glass is a kind of like a somewhat something equal. I'm not really kind of like a going to the depth of it, or I don't really have that much information regarding about how the glass made. Like probably I'm kind of like a knew that ki sugar and kind of like a something the scrap glasses combine, heat up, and then it kind of like made another glass and things like that. But still, okay, I don't really have that much kind of like information. But what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that the inner layer of the glass and outer layer of the glass is somewhat something equal. Okay, yeah, not exactly, but somewhat something like a 90-80%, somewhat something equal. Oh yeah, because both part of the glass is kind of like a showing the same property. That's why it kind of like a something, the whole glass represent as a one single body, which kind of like a which does not reflect the light. Okay, it kind of like a bend through. Okay, yeah. But our body is not made up like that. Our body is made up of lot of things. Okay, yeah, we have skins, muscles, bones, organs, lot of stuff. Okay, yeah. And we cannot able to being composed by one single, it cannot. Okay, yeah. So that's why light cannot transfer through us. It does not. It does not. So that's why we cannot able to be invisible in practical sense of point of perspective. All right. Okay. Now regarding about the question says that what if because of the laughter can we able to kind of like a invisible, or we could invisible. First of all, invisible is not actually possible, but still, if such thing is kind of like a things like if the laughter is kind of like a possible, then probably it's not. Okay, it's something that now. Okay, let me give you the perspective. Okay, yeah. When I try to apply any kind of like a work, it really required effort. Okay, it really required kind of like a effort. Let's just say that if I wanted to kind of like I have this box and I wanted to move this box from one place to another place. What should I supposed to do? I have to push that box from one place to another place. So when I'm doing it that, I'm kind of like losing some sort of amount of energy to kind of like a work done. Okay, yeah. Then the work done will happen. Na? I have to kind of like lose some sort of amount of energy. Right? In invisibility is a kind of like some sort of amount of work. Okay, in practical sense of point of perspective, invisible doesn't really make any kind of like something work. Let's just say kind of like the elastic girl from Fantastic Four. Okay, yeah. Like I'm kind of like a popping of this kind of like a superhero. She could kind of like a invisible. Okay, yeah. So what exactly happened? Okay, yeah. That key like in practical sense of point of perspective, she might not do kind of like a things that she put effort to kind of like a being invisible. No, she just kind of like somebody just invisible, but there are a lot of work done is actually happen inside her body and things, and kind of like a metabolism and kind of like a skin reflection and body organ and things and that and this kind of like a really required work done. Okay, yeah. Now invisibility is a kind of like some work, then it really required a kind of like some sort of amount of effort. Now where is that effort came from? Okay, yeah. Effort came from kind of like some energy that we have, right? Like basically we have kind of like energy that we are kind of like a store inside of us. Like basically we have energy in the form of muscles, or we eat food and things like that. Okay, yeah. But this is not hard enough, because these are kind of like some energy that we have is meant to be kind of like a survive, is not meant to be kind of like some invisible. So we need a kind of like a different source of energy. And what would be that particular source? Laughter would be that. Okay, yeah. But why would you think that laughter would be that kind of like some energy source? Why not sad? Why not kind of like some angry? Why not horny? Or why not? Okay, yeah. Let's compare the multiple emotions. Multiple emotions represent multiple energy source. Okay, yeah. Okay, sadness doesn't really create energy inside of us, it loses the energy inside of us. How? When we sad, we get kind of like anxious, stress, and things like that is not really good for our human body. Nothing really at all. Okay. What about horny? Horny is also not represent as a kind of like an energy source, because when you are horny, you also wanted to kind of like lose some sort of amount of energy. It's not meant to be kind of like a gain some sort of energy. Nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. You might gonna lose some sort of energy by kind of like some masturbation and things and that. By the way, I'm kind of like somebody telling all those by frictional point of perspective. Okay, because there is no real at all. We cannot able to kind of like invisible, nothing really at all. I'm just trying to kind of like connect the dot regarding about the practical point of perspective, and that's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay, yeah, nothing is kind of like a real. Okay, yeah. But laughter is only one emotion that kind of like assembly we could get little bit amount of energy. Okay, yeah, like when we laughter, when we kind of like laugh, when we feel really happy or things like that, we gain some sort of amount of energy. So regarding about the friction point of perspective, let's just understand that ki laughter would be that energy sources that we could be a kind of like assembly invisible. Okay, yeah. So if this happened, the laughter would be a source, and our body is actually made up by such a thing that would be kind of like simply invisible. Now, if such thing will gonna happen, then what would be that particular sense? What is exactly is this thing? How that particular world would be look like? Well, if this thing is actually happened, there is a lot of kind of like a things might be kind of like a okay. There is a couple of things I wanted to explain. Okay, laughter, yes, it kind of like a gives you source. Even if you like in the kind of like a some in this friction world, in the reality world, yeah, when you laugh, you feel really good. You kind of like a gain some amount of energy. I'm not really sure how much energy that you get, but you feel really good. You feel really happy. You feel something good. Okay, yeah. And I think that it might gonna get kind of like a little bit amount of energy. So I consider that ki laughter gives you little bit amount of energy. Alright, yeah. But do we laugh all the time? Like, ask this question, do we laugh all the time? No, it does not. Do we cry all the time? No, it does not. So what exactly is this thing? Okay, yeah, let me give you the perspective. Okay, when you heard a joke, you kind of like a feel really happy. You laugh. When you heard this joke again, you might not gonna laugh. This is the kind of like a simply common human problem that we have. Okay, yeah. Because of that, when you do kind of like make little bit of fun, people might gonna laugh at first, but they will not gonna laugh at second. Okay, yeah. Laughter kind of like a represent that kind of like a somebody out of the world context, but as well as kind of like somebody surprise. Okay, yeah. How much that we are kind of like getting the surprise and things like that. Okay, yeah. Let's just understand how we laugh. Okay, how we laugh. So basically, since the kind of like a beginning of the human evolution, laughter is not a kind of like a somebody emotion. Okay, laughter is kind of like a somebody expressed by something through the communication. Okay, yeah. It's just like we are being really scared and things like that, and a historical point of perspective, it kind of like a represent that we just kind of like a feel really happy, and the kind of like a somebody the even more expressive version is a laugh. Okay, like a happy is a kind of like a somebody emotion that we are kind of like a represent. Let's just say you are kind of like a somebody alive by kind of like a somebody the tiger or things like that. You feel really good. You feel really happy that yeah, I'm kind of like a save. I did not die today, so I'm kind of like a feel really happy. Okay, yeah. Now improved version of happy is a laughter. Okay, improved version of this thing is a laughter. Okay, whatever. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is this thing that ki how we actually laugh. How do we actually laugh? We laugh regarding about the surprise thing. We also laugh regarding about how they kind of like assembly way that they execute things. Okay, let me give you perspective. Okay, yeah. If someone had a joke, a new joke, you will kind of like a feel really happy. You because the first time you kind of like heard that joke. But if you heard that joke again, you might not gonna happy that much. You might get little bit happy, but not that much. Let's just give you the perspective. When you heard first time a joke, you might get happy, let's just say 100 out of 100. Okay, yeah, because you are so happy and things and that. When you heard this same joke again, you might get happy, let's say 100 out of 20. Okay, 100 out of 20 or 30, probably less than 50. Okay, yeah. But when you heard the same joke with different context, you also might get happiness. Okay, you also might get happy 100 out of 100. Okay, yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is this thing: the happiness is kind of like a represent that how do we present our thought process, communication styles, and kind of like a visual presentation or things like that. Example, Lauren and Hardy, like basically this is kind of like a show that I was kind of like watching when I was kind of like a child. This was kind of like a broadcast in Doordarshan television. So Lauren and Hardy. Okay, so Lauren and Hardy is a kind of like a somebody show, is a visual laughter thing. They does not kind of like a speak any kind of like a words, but they laugh people according to the visual point of perspective, which kind of like a feel little bit of fun and things like that, which is really good. Yeah, which is really good. But when same act is kind of like a represent in today's world, do we laugh? Not really that much. Why? Because of that, Lauren and Hardy kind of like a creates a kind of like a such a aura, such a kind of like a visual representation that our brains might not forget. Example, Lauren and Hardy is a kind of like a black and white film. It kind of like a somebody have kind of like a somebody not clear film, kind of like a somebody the every action kind of like a jumpy and things, the expression are kind of like a robotics and things like that, which kind of like a feel really good and which also kind of like somebody replicate real life again, but we might not get laugh. Why? Because of that it's the image that we have from this laughter from Lauren and Hardy, and we just kind of like a direct to the Lauren and Hardy. Same thing with the Charlie Chaplin. Okay, yeah, because the Charlie Chaplin is a kind of like a thing that the legend. Why we call it as a legend? Because it does not copy. Okay, yeah, like basically this thing Charlie Chaplin is kind of like exists in one times and that's it. Okay, yeah, because it does not copy. Even if the other person try to copy the Charlie Chaplin, it does not work that much because there is some sort of authentic aura or kind of like a personalized visualized perception are actually connected with that particular thing, and we just connect that particular stuff and we just never give that spot to someone else. If you still not really understand who is your best comedian, okay, yeah, who is your best comedian that you kind of like feel really good, okay, yeah. Let's just say for me Zakir Khan. Okay, yeah, so I'm kind of considered as a Zakir Khan is a really best comedian. When I kind of like watch his stand-up comedy on YouTube platform, I feel really happy, I feel really good, I feel that wow, it's really amazing and things like that. Okay, yeah, but Zakir Khan is the only comedian that exists in India? No, definitely not. There are so many comedians are actually exist in India. Then why am I not kind of like watching them? Well, I don't know. It's something that when I try to stand up comedian, I kind of like somebody usually go through Zakir Khan, Bessie, Abhishek Upmanyu, or maybe Akash Gupta. Yeah, these are kind of like some comedian that I kind of like somebody watch and spend times. Okay, yeah. There are so many kind of like a comedian. I'm not kind of like say this thing, but my mind is not letting me to kind of like watch those things because I didn't really knew them. Okay, even if they are kind of like so much comedy and things and that, and I knew that okay, I feel really happy when I watch this thing, but I might not gonna click that thing. Why? Because our brain is kind of like somebody let you to get a fun, okay, yeah, and it kind of like somebody hold that fun position to such a thing that we already familiar. Okay, so that's why we kind of like give this spot to the only person that we familiar. Let's just say Zakir Khan uploaded new video, so I just kind of like click it and I'm gonna watch it. I feel really good and things like that. Even if that video is not really that much fun and things like that, but still I will kind of like watch that particular video and things like that. Okay, yeah. Probably it's actually happened inside of my mind. I'm not really sure it actually happened with you. If you might be a kind of like a person who are kind of like a try to explore the laughter from multiple point of perspective, even if you don't know, that is also really good too. It's not really that probably like basically every person is kind of every person is kind of like a wired by some sort of different thing, and it's bitterly common. It's not really that kind of like a some things. Okay, yeah. Okay, but the question is that how do we laugh and why do we laugh? Okay, yeah, how do we laugh? Okay, yeah. First of all, is that laughter is not a kind of like a forceful act. Okay, yeah. When you laugh, you laugh. You cannot fake laugh. You can fake laugh. It's not really that you cannot fake laugh, but fake laugh can easily catch up. Okay, yeah. Let me give you perspective. Okay, yeah. Every emotion that we could kind of like somebody, every emotion can represent through fake stuff. Okay, let's just say if I wanted to sad, I'm not really sad, I can fake sad. Okay, yeah. If I'm kind of like a happy, if I'm not really happy, but if I wanted to represent happy, then I try to represent that happy. Okay, yeah. But let me tell you the perspective. Okay, it's my experience. I feel that thing. I'm not really sure have you feel that thing too, but still, I was in the office. Okay, yeah, my team leader are kind of like a made some sort of joke. Okay, yeah, team leader or yeah, team leader. Okay, my senior kind of like a made a joke. Everyone are happy. I didn't really feel that much happy. Why? Because the joke is not that much things, and I might not gonna hear that much properly. It's not like I don't know what exactly happened, but I didn't laugh that much. I didn't really laugh. Everyone looked at me. I think that I kind of like missed something. Then I started laughing. It's a legitly fake laugh. My colleagues say you are kind of like faking it. No. I understand your joke, sir. It's really funny. It's really good. Yeah. Like basically, when you are in a private sector, now you have to do kind of like a somebody represent that you are kind of like a funny and things and that and it is nonsense kind of like something corporate chat, whatever. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, a fake laugh. Okay, we cannot able to do fake laugh because fake laugh is not a kind of like something comes from your mouth. Okay, like basically if you kind of like thinks that this person is kind of like laughing, means like that laughing is not came from your mouth is just kind of like something, let's just say a nozzle. Okay, yeah, laugh is actually came from inside, mostly come from the stomach. Okay, yeah, it kind of like a feel really good and kind of like some emotion kind of like a somebody generate inside your stomach. Probably I'm not really sure how do I supposed to express this thing, but when we laugh, we kind of like laugh feel through from stomach and it kind of like somebody come out through nozzle, and that's why we could kind of like laugh and things like that. That's why our entire body is kind of like somebody just like fumble and things, and that this is how we kind of like somebody laugh and things like that. So probably is this thing, laugh cannot fake it, or if someone fake it then probably it kind of like a find it very easily, because is this thing na ki laugh does not include just a one organ like a mouth. It kind of like a somebody comes from different organ. Okay, if you not really understand, take a see the photo of the person who's actually laughing. Okay, yeah, when the person laugh, it not only just open his mouth, but his eyes is kind of like a simply crimple. Okay, crimple, like basically his eyes might be kind of like a little lower. Okay, yeah, his breathing is kind of like a bit more faster. Okay, yeah, his expression kind of like a feel really very different, very different. Okay, yeah, and that's the kind of like some internal thing. But there is also another thing too. There is also stomach and entire body. Like basically when we laugh, we are not laugh by just our mouth, we laugh by an entire human body expression through. Okay, some people kind of like somebody cry while laughing. Okay, yeah, this is what actually happened when we are kind of like somebody laugh too much that we cannot able to understand that is it kind of like a laugh or is it too laugh, because yeah, some people kind of like a cry while they are laughing because it was too laugh. Okay, yeah, I also feel that stuff too. Okay, yeah, so this is what kind of like somebody is saying, that's why we kind of like somebody laugh. Okay, yeah. Now the question is that if we kind of like simply laugh, then probably can we able to kind of like being invisible from this laughing? Well, it does not. It does not. Okay, why it's not? Okay, we have kind of like somebody retro reflector glass. Okay, I'm not really sure, I just kind of like heard this thing probably in frictionalized movie. I'm not really sure that it's actually available in real world. Okay, so what is like a couple of scientists who actually invented this particular stuff. Okay, I'm not really sure is this kind of like a real news or not, but I just kind of like heard it. Okay, so there is a couple of people who kind of like invented a glass. Okay, that glass turn visible, and when you turn on kind of like a switch, it kind of like became invisible. Okay, it's not invisible. Okay, it's not really that kind of like somebody just became invisible. No, it's a kind of like somebody is saying that it is a visible but probably little bit camouflage. Okay, camouflage would be kind of like a really good word. A camouflage means like that if you seen it closely, then you might gonna seen it, but if you didn't really seen it that much, then probably it just disappear. And this is what kind of like a camouflage means. What, like this scientist who kind of like invented this particular glass would kind of like create a camouflage, means like that it bend into the background. Yeah, if you kind of like see it closely, you might gonna see it, but if you kind of like somebody just like in our day-to-day life, we might not gonna see that much kind of like somebody background that much. And in this particular context, it kind of like somebody bend into the background, and it kind of like feel like camouflage. Okay, so this scientist is actually invented this particular glass. Okay, now those scientists, they mention that they really required a lot of power to do this thing, because let me tell you, this is just a kind of like a normal glass. Okay, this is kind of like a normal glass. You turn the button, it kind of like a turn into visible. You turn off the button, you turn off the button, it became kind of like a visible. You turn on the button, it kind of like a became camouflage. I'm using camouflage word, I'm not using invisible word. Camouflage word is little bit invisible, little bit, not fully. Okay, little bit invisible. Okay, yeah. And they mentioned they require so much amount of energy to do this thing. Okay, so much immense amount of energy to kind of like do this thing. They don't really have kind of like that much kind of like power sources, so that's why they are kind of like utilizing battery or things to kind of like make that particular glass invisible, as well as kind of like assembly. Invisible means what? Ki behind this glass, whatever you put, it kind of like assembly as it is, but for the rest of the thing, it's kind of like a bitterly camouflage. Means imagine a kind of like assembly glass, a kind of like a fit white glass, you just kind of like a put in front of you, and might be kind of like assembly is this thing. Behind it there is a you will kind of like simply exist, but kind of like for the another person kind of like a feel like camouflage and things like that, which is really cool innovation. By the way, it actually happened. I'm not really sure that news is kind of like a really authentic or not. I am not like, I just heard, I just kind of like simply watch, but I'm not really sure. Okay, yeah. I just, yeah. Okay, so you just have to re-verify this particular stuff. Okay, so they mentioned that they really required a lot of amount of energy, which is somewhat something really true, because you just think that they mentioned that there is a lot of kind of like a particle is actually moving through this and that and that. That's why it kind of like creates the camouflage effect from this glass. Okay, yeah. Now, basically, is this thing that if I wanted to try to do this thing naturally in our skin and things like that, it really required a lot of amount of laughter. Because if I'm gonna say, it really required a lot of amount of energy, and energy actually come from the laughter. So we need to laugh really, really hard, really, really fucking hard. Then we kind of like became really invisible. So how much we supposed to be laugh? Like equivalent to kind of like simply tears came out from your eyes. That level of hard, that level of kind of like a laughing. Then you kind of like simply invisible, and only for a fraction of couple of minutes. That's it. Okay, not really that much. So probably is this thing that if I try to imagine that what if kind of like somebody, if we laughter and we became invisible, it's not, it's not. Okay, yeah. And another thing is that laughter is a kind of like a very weird thing. Okay, when we laugh out loud. Okay, yeah. And invisible is a kind of like somebody is this thing that it should supposed to be silent. Like imagine is this thing, let's just say that a stealth soldier who has a kind of like a mission to kind of like simply wipe out the terrorist. Okay, yeah. Now the stealth soldier who kind of like arrive in that particular location, and he just have to kind of like laugh that much hard. Okay, so that he will become invisible. So when he laugh, he might gonna emit some sort of sound, like basically when we laugh, we just like ha 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 ha, this kind of like sound that we emit. Okay, yeah. So basically, how do we supposed to mix the silent plus invisible? It's not, because when we try to laugh, we kind of like emit some sort of sound. We might be. Sorry, I was in the call. Okay, yeah. Probably is this thing that suddenly there is a call is actually came, and I just kind of like talking about the particular stuff. Whatever, I just completely lost what I was actually talking regarding about the laughing and things like that. But whatever, you kind of like got my point. Okay, I don't want to expand that much. Kind of like tell you in detail regarding about this thing. Okay, yeah. First of all, is that we cannot laugh, and we cannot invisible while doing laugh. Okay, yeah, because it's not. Okay, yeah. And what if such thing will gonna happen? Then probably I didn't really talk about the what if such thing will gonna happen. What if we could kind of like simply laugh and we would become invisible? Then probably is this thing we might gonna see very different weird reality. Okay, let's just say that in the in the kind of like a comedy, in the stand-up comedy show, everyone are present but everyone became invisible. Okay, yeah. Also, if the comedian sees person, then probably it might gonna represent that, oh, mujhe log dikh rahe hai, so probably I just have to kind of like people might not gonna laugh that much. Okay, yeah. Another thing is that now we cannot able to use this kind of like a power in stealth operation. It cannot. Okay, yeah, obviously imagine that you wanted to kind of like try to kill any kind of like a terrorist, and you just kind of like a laugh, and probably you might gonna invisible. Okay, yeah, but you kind of like emit some sort of sound now. Probably the enemy might gonna understand where you are and what you are. So probably it's not gonna worth it. Okay, yeah. So stealth operation, it's not you. We will not gonna utilize this particular perspective. Okay, yeah. And another thing is that na ki there is a multiple layers of invisible. It's not only that ki we became fully invisible. Let's just say that ki sometimes we kind of like a laugh at something that a kind of like a normal joke. So are we became invisible for a couple of seconds, or are we invisible half, or what, or things like that? There's a lot of kind of a complex thing and things like that. World became kind of like a little bit kind of like a weird, but probably is this thing that this is the kind of like a stuff that I could imagine at this moment probably. Okay, yeah. All right, this is it. I should supposed to be end here, and thank you.